Oh, welcome everyone. Welcome to Wednesday Wisdom, and thank you, Anna, for joining us. My name's Mel. I'm one of the co-founders at Justice in Fashion. We're working to redistribute wealth, power, and risk in the fashion industry. And we've started to do Insta Lives every other Wednesday and meet with fantastic people like Anna. So, shall we get going straight away?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a bit about you, Anna, and tell us what your passions are. What do you enjoy doing?
Well, obviously, making clothes or designing clothes is definitely one of them. But I don't know. I've always loved doing many different things at the same time. So I do the clothing, and then I play the harp.
Wow.
And I love gardening. So that's been keeping me going in lockdown. And I've recently started rollerblading again.
Okay. Good.
But like my biggest passion, I think, is like finding out how to problem solve issues, like how to create clothes that are versatile and can be made without putting other people at risk or the planet at risk, and like sort of mitigating impact and stuff. So that's what I've been putting a lot of time and effort into in the last 10 years.
Yeah, wow. So the harp, I've got a friend actually who plays the harp, and it looks really, really hard. Is it quite difficult to learn?
I'd say it's like any instrument, you know, you have to learn the technique, and then it's just down to how much you practice.
Yeah.
It's questionable as to whether I practice enough, but
as long as you enjoy it, that's what I always think. So.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your brand Phannatiq and the vision that you had for the brand.
Well, I started it in 2010. It got launched kind of officially in Fashion Week in February 2011, and well, like any company that's completely bootstrapped, there was a lot of learning as I went, and like it's mainly just been me. So you know, as I learned things, I'd evolve, and a lot of trial and error. But the sort of overriding kind of ethos within it from the beginning was like trying to see whether it would even be possible to create a sort of scalable business model that fitted within my core ethics from the ground up, instead of like, because like from the very beginning, having done like research and stuff, there was a lot of incredible cottage industries that are amazing at, you know, sustainability and ethics and everything, but obviously cottage industries don't scale up. And then there are a lot of like big brands who have come in and done like some sustainable lines within their company, or like sustainable sub companies within them, but there weren't really many examples of just something that was scalable but also still maintained sort of similar mentality and ethics to a smaller company. Still ongoing. yeah But no, it's steep learning curve.
So when you started out, what was the vision? How did you think of it sort of 10 years down the road, or did you just think, actually, as you're just starting out, what do I want to sort of accomplish in this first year?
So I think the first couple of years, I'm not going to lie, I did feel very much the need to conform to the industry sort of standards, and thought that I had to position myself within that. And then slowly over the sort of third, fourth year, I started realizing that this doesn't work. And I think so in terms of like production and sustainability, that's kind of been there pretty much since day one. But for example, like I know oh, hi Petra. Petra's actually one of my people in Slovenia. That's amazing.
Yeah. Welcome, Petra.
Yeah, and Petra's instrumental, actually. I'll go into that later. So yeah, like the no Photoshop policy, for example, that we have, came up because I was exhibiting at London Fashion Week, and some blogger or journalist or someone came up to me and was like, pointed to a picture in my lookbook where this like size 8 model had like this tiny little bit of, like a crease under her arm, and they were like, oh, I would have photoshopped that out,
Really?
and I'm like, that's a size 8 model, like,
Yeah.
what do you think people are meant to look like? And like after that I was like, right, I'm literally going to make it an official policy in my company that any official images cannot be retouched in any way like the model. So like obviously you have to, contrast and lighting and making stuff like fit in terms of hue and saturation and stuff, but like no retouching of models. So like if there's a blemish, that's because there's a blemish, and if there's a stretch mark, there's a stretch mark. And like because frankly, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sick to the teeth of like being made to believe that people look that sort of airbrushed all the time.
It's that sort of a whole of being perfect, isn't it? And actually, none of us are perfect, but it's difficult when you're bombarded with images and pictures of people who look perfect.
What does what does perfect even mean? Like,
exactly.
What are we basing that on?
Yeah, it's true.
We're alive, we're surviving. I mean, that's pretty good going, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're right, definitely. That's good. It's good that you've got that as part of your kind of DNA.
So that was like when I started proper, like overtly rebelling, I think, and not caring anymore about the sort of trying to conform and do it in a subtle way. That was kind of a big moment, I think, for me in terms of how I start thinking about the company. But, yeah.
And obviously we're both East London ladies,
yes.
which is brilliant. And I didn't realise how close we were to each other. But how much does the local community play a part in your designs and kind of the work that you do?
I think it plays a significant role. For starters, ever since the company started, we've been based in East London somewhere. So we started off in Homerton, in like a really dodgy old like factory building place that had been sort of like semi-illegally converted by some guy who probably hadn't declared it in any way. And, like, and then we moved to Walthamstow in 2012, I think it was, and actually shared a studio with Petra. So we were both working out in the same studio at that point, and then it was before 2012, because in 2013 we then moved to where we're based now, which is like near Blackhorse Road in Walthamstow. And then, so all our 3D printed necklaces get printed in Walthamstow by a local guy, and the other like literal connection we have in terms of our design is that the fly tipping print, which is one of our 3 key prints, is actually photographs of fly tipping from around Walthamstow. And those of you who know Walthamstow know that we have an unofficial tourist board which glorifies the abandoned mattresses around the borough, and there are mattresses there, and like many other, mostly from the street we're on, actually, so I didn't even have to go far.
Even better then. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. So tell us about the type of clothes that you sell, and do you have like a typical consumer?
It's really funny because actually I've had to look into that again recently because someone else was asking for some data, and like I actually genuinely can't put my finger on what demographic is our customer, because I guess like in terms of striving to be as versatile and diverse as possible, I've kind of become a victim of my own policy in a way, because I have people who are like in their late teens, people in their 70s, like all genders, ages, lawyers, like street artists, musicians. Like I guess the only thing that maybe holds them together is that they like independent brands, and they like Yeah. But not even all my customers just like independent brands. So no, I don't know.
Yeah. So it literally could be anybody. You don't really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love seeing how so many like different people style things as well. Like, because they'll buy stuff and then you'll get tagged in them, and then you're like, wow, I'd never think about wearing like that. Or
which is probably what you want as a designer, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, lovely. So on your website, and I love this, so I'm going to read what it says on the website. It says, what you see is everything we know. We choose our suppliers for many reasons, some because of their environmental policies, some for their labour policies. In sustainability, eco-consciousness and ethics, it's impossible to be fault-free, but we're trying to be transparent. I hope it provides some insight into how we do things. And so do you find that actually that's enough for people, that information, that people go, okay, yeah, this is great? Or do you find that they still want to know more about supply chains and kind of how you do your brand?
I think that kind of boils down to why they're there and their approach to our brand or their shopping, because some people like to buy our clothes because they like how it looks and they like how it feels and they like how versatile it is, and other people like it because of our transparency or like our sort of wish to be as sort of conscientious as possible. And so I think for the people who are just coming to it from a clothing point of view, they find it really interesting that they can get to see into these factories, and like, because when under each garment on the shop there's a button that says like how is this made, and you can click on it and then you come to a page which has an overview of every step of the manufacturing process, from like fiber all the way to packaging. And then it gives you like a little paragraph so you can just see the journey. But if you want to look more into it, if you click on those individual like articles, you can then see step-by-step process, like photos. Like, so in the print studio that we use in like Slovenia, in a place called, and I see there's like 2 people at least now who speak Slovene on here, so please don't laugh at me, but is it like I don't see I'm so sorry.
It sounds right, but I don't know.
An awesome dude called Urash who prints our fabrics, and so he let me spend the whole day just going around the factory taking photos and videos. Thanks, Petra. That's how you spell it. If you look down, Petra has very kindly commented on
thank you, Petra,
with the spelling. And like yeah, and so I took some videos and some photos of all the stations where they do all the different things, like mixing the pigments to like literal Pantone accuracy, and the dark room where they expose the screens, and the print table and stuff. And so like people can watch videos and see photos of all of those things if they want to, but equally if they're not interested in any of that, it's not in their face, it's just a tiny little button at the bottom of a of the garment page, so they can just shop if they want to. There's no like it's there if people want it. Like, I would never want to force that information on people, but I think it's nice to at least offer it as an option, you know. Yeah.
And you said obviously in the statement about how you try to be transparent, and we talked about this a little bit before about, you know, your thoughts around can you know exactly what is going on in the supply chains at all stages, and that's something that we discuss a lot.
No, and I think like unless you have a full-time person installed at every place that's there 24/7, there's literally like, even people who can afford to have massive auditing bodies involved in various stages of their manufacture know that there are times and there are instances, like, you know, especially in large scale manufacturing, whereas like you can be as vigilant as you possibly can, and someone will get busy or they'll push a deadline too fast, and so they'll outsource, and you don't necessarily even know, even though you might even have in the contract that they need to tell you, and they don't, you know, like, so so for a small entity like me, which is just essentially me and some really awesome like self-employed agents in various strategic places, it's totally impossible. So that's why the only sort of solution I could find was like either me or people I could trust going to the places we could, and then everywhere else it's like, well, this is the information we have, this is what we know, here is all of the contact details we know, so if you want to look into it further, you're welcome to. You know, it's very far from perfect. And just be open about it, because I feel like it's really easy to fall into the trap of like feeling like you need to just sort of like say the good stuff all the time, and then you sort of possibly accidentally give an impression that you're more on top of it than you actually are. So yeah, Petra is my person in Slovenia who is in constant touch with all the factories there and does the quality control and production management for me. And she has very similar ethics to mine, so it's like having a me there with extra on top, basically.
And so important to have someone on the ground, isn't it, in the
so
country
important. Yeah, so so if I have any questions about anything going on the Slovenia side of things, then she's the person I call.
Yeah. So obviously we've been locked down, and every country has been affected by the coronavirus. How have you been able to protect your workers through this time?
Well, because I'm such a small entity, like in London, it is literally me. I'm the one who does all of the order fulfillment and the packing and the designing, pattern cutting, but there's been less of that the last few months. So in terms of what I've been doing in London is that I made everyone aware that order fulfillment would be a bit slower, because I'm only going to go to the drop shop once a week to minimize contact with other people and also the shop workers. So I've just been in the studio the whole time doing that, and then I'll go out once a week to drop stuff off, and everyone's been really patient about that. It's been totally fine. I chatted to Petra today and got the lowdown on how Slovenia has been dealing with it. So the factory that we use there, when lockdown started, they basically implemented all of the Slovene guidelines in terms of social distancing, and because the factory is relatively small, a lot of the workers are family pods as well, so it was really easy to form a kind of work bubble with social distancing within the factory because of the amount of space versus employees there are. The at-risk group, like the older workers, got to work from home. Right. And do piecework, but they were so missing their the companionship of working together that they were like asking so badly to come back into work. So as soon as like lockdown got relaxed a bit, they were back in the factory. And and as Petra says, like Slovenia is an incredibly good country for like centralized government enforced like auditing and laws for employment and everything. So I don't think it was anywhere close to the fiasco that we've had in the UK in terms of guidelines and everything. Yeah. But so they spent a lot of it making masks and protective clothing for the local authorities and the what is it called? Old people's homes and stuff. Right.
Yeah, which I think sounds quite common. There's a lot of factories have been doing that, haven't they? So and I know when we chatted before tonight, and we discussed about that you'd also had you'd worked with another factory in another country, and that you decided to move to Slovenia. Do you want to talk a little bit just about why you made that decision? You don't have to talk about specifics, but just why you decided.
I think it's because, like, irrespective of how good one's intentions are, as one as I mentioned before, sometimes you might be given wrong information or discover more things over time. And so we got to the point where various things didn't align with with my sort of like core values enough. And because I'm such a small entity, I didn't have enough power to stipulate things in contracts that would change that, because I just didn't have the volume of orders for them to take me seriously. So I had to make the decision to move my production instead, because that was all I could do within my power. And so so we'd already been working with these factories in Slovenia anyway, doing other styles, so it was a very easy move to just give them more of the production, if that makes sense. And it's worked really well. Like, I've not regretted it in any way. It's sad because like one of the sort of things that we were doing alongside of manufacturing elsewhere was working with an NGO, a non-profit that was using the factory waste from all the local factories, because it was in a city where the main sort of economy was garment making. And so like our baby clothes, for example, were made through a partnership with them. They're called Redo. Check them out. You can also see on our website, there's links to them in our How Is It Made section. So there's links to all of these factories. Like, so the factory we use at the moment is Phannatiq. They do most of our manufacturing, and if you click on our about page or any of the garment pages on how it's made, you can see inside. You can see Sasha and Dusan, who run the factory, and and I will also answer any questions that people have if it's not there.
Yeah, but it sounds like, from what you're saying, that you're being as transparent as you can, and there's photos, you're talking about it, and I think that's some consumers are wanting to know that information now, aren't they?
Yeah, and I'm really happy to provide it. And like, I feel like when you start looking into sustainability and ethics, you realize that there is no way to mitigate, there's no way to solve everything. And so all you can do is educate yourself to mitigate as much as you can. And then, because I think a lot of people don't realize that it's impossible to do everything, I didn't want to give them the wrong impression. And like, sustainability or ethics can mean so much to so many different people. And so I thought, instead of like letting things get misinterpreted or anything, if I was just like honest about, this is what we do, and like some of it you might not agree with, and like some of this isn't perfect and we're working on that, and blah, and this still needs to get looked into, then at least people can make informed decisions about whether we fit within their criteria, instead of I don't know.
No, it's true, because I come across a company, and I'd seen some dresses I liked, and I emailed, because on their website I couldn't really see much about how they do things and who they work with, and I emailed them, and I never heard back, so I didn't buy anything from them, because I thought, actually, all I'm asking, you're right, all I'm asking was just about their supply chains, and asking more questions than there was on the website. But they never got back to me, so I just think the information needs to be there in some capacity, so people have questions that they can ask those.
Yeah, and like, I've done loads of mistakes as well. So for example, when I started, I bought into this like biodegradable plastic mailing bag thing, and started using them. They're like these blue, and they have like biodegradable written on them. And then on further investigation, I discovered that they don't biodegrade, they just disintegrate, which just like introduces micro and nanoplastics to the environment, which is so not what I imagined biodegradable meant. So then I started using recycled paper mailing bags instead. But these, sometimes like you can't know everything immediately, like so shit happens. But I guess the trick is whether you care enough to do something about it when you then find out, you know what I mean? Like Absolutely, I agree. So
thinking and talking about the consumer, something that we talk about a lot in Justice and Fashion is about how we can educate the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there has been progress? You know, when we think about the consumer and fast fashion and what people buy, do you think progress has been made, that people are more aware about these things, or do you think not?
Well, I think on many levels, people are definitely becoming more aware of certain factors. I think, like, you know, organizations like you guys and Fashion Revolution and people like that have done a really good job, and are doing a good job of like making really awesome entry level consumer facing campaigns to that effect. And you know, like, just looking at the amount of people who get involved every year with that shows me that there are at least a certain percentage really interested. I think that the fact that big companies have started using sustainability as a form of marketing in, you know, to a greater or lesser questionable, shows that they also think that people are getting within it.
I think I froze then a little bit, sorry.
That's okay. I don't know if I did too. But yeah, so I think yes, but I think we've got a long way to go. I think also that we need to find a way to make it more accessible, because currently being sustainable is still very expensive, and that means that a huge percentage of the population is excluded from the option of being sustainable, let alone the choice, if that makes sense. Yeah,
no, I agree. And I think, you know, some people, when they do hear things and they think, oh, actually, I might not shop there anymore, I think people are starting to become more aware, but like you said, we have got a long way to go still as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So just last question really is are you working on any new initiatives, sort of, now we're coming out of lockdown and things are starting to sort of get going again, for 2021?
Yes, there are a couple of things happening. So lockdown really made me rethink a lot of stuff again, you know, as it does sometimes, things do. So there's going to be some changes to how we run things. Both lockdown and Brexit and everything has meant that a lot of stuff is having to be rethought of. So there's going to be some cool stuff happening. There's going to be a lot more sort of fun, creative, one-off things happening that people like. So I guess what I've been doing, what lockdown has made me think of, is reconnecting with the sort of creative side of everything again. And as a result, the London side of stuff is going to be more like, small scale's not the right word, but like sort of kind of studio based again, and having a bit more fun with it, and not doing many things of the same thing, and just giving people the option to, you know, be the first to comment on this one-off garment. And we've been having a lot of fun doing that, like just using up fabrics in the studio. So, and then also Petra and I have been doing a bit of scheming, so there'll be interesting stuff happening on that side of things too.
Sounds exciting.
Hopefully to put two fingers up to Brexit somewhat. And
so on a personal level, are you going to be doing any workshops? As I'm only down the road, I'd love to be able to do a workshop. I don't know if that's something you're thinking about doing.
Oh, wow. Well, I have seriously been considering doing some workshops on how to re-love clothes that you've fallen out of love with. So that could involve things like spot printing or dyeing or like customizing. So that is definitely on the cards for sure. Whether that's online or in person, that's yet to be worked out logistically in terms of distancing and access to equipment and stuff. But I really I'm starting to feel like the next level of encouraging people to take the power back in terms of sustainability from an accessible point of view is to teach people how, with very few bits of bobs at home and with relatively little skill, one can have a lot of fun with clothes and not spend any money, and not buy any new clothes, which seems counterproductive, I guess, given I'm a clothing company. But but I'd much rather that, to be honest. Like, yeah,
I'd love that, because like I said, I've actually upcycled my Converse trainers, so I'm definitely in that sort of trying to love my clothes for longer. So yeah, that sounds brilliant. So
amazing. Yeah, I rediscovered some old t-shirts that I've had since I was 17, and weirdly they no longer fit me. And so I've been adding some panels of my new prints and like contrasting prints to them, and like totally been wearing them again after maybe 1 decade or so. Like,
yeah, I love that, absolutely. So we've got a few questions that have come in, so I'll just go through those. So first one, brands do have a responsibility to consumers, but how does the consumer react to real models being used with no retouching? Is it still seen as aspirational?
I would hope. Okay, this is probably going to sound a bit weird, but I would hope we'd move beyond aspirational now and like just using it as a tool to visually see like how it would hang on my particular body shape. Because like the whole point, I don't know, for me, if I buy clothes online, I don't get to try it on before I have to pay for it. And so I want to have as much, like, the closest possible sort of like idea of what this thing's going to look like on my body shape. And so the reason we've done it mainly is just so that obviously you can't have everyone, but if we, trying to have as many as possible so that at least there's somewhere close to what it might look like on your body. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it shouldn't be aspirational. It should just be the norm. And I don't want to sell a fantasy. I want to sell a tool to expressing yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree. Next one, you are neighbours with Black Horse Lane at Leah. Do you share best practices as your ethos is similar?
I'm going to be frank, I don't actually know much about them.
No, I don't.
I know they exist, and I know that people speak highly of them, but I've not even been there. I'm a terrible neighbour, clearly. So maybe that's something I should check out.
That's for 2001. That's for, the next thing. The next one was, how do you think you can better your supply chain? Do you have a Petra who you can trust? But if she wasn't, what would you do?
That thought has crossed my mind a lot, and I think my route currently is scaling back. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, and it means it's less scalable, but I'm kind of starting to sort of question whether scalability is a necessity, if that makes sense, in terms so for me, I think simplifying it, making it as local as you can, gives you way more scope for keeping on top of things, and also minimizes the carbon footprint. So chain, and even they say they can't always keep track on it, even when it's stamped and everything. So
can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Sorry about that. My internet's not.
That's right.
So would you consider making in the UK?
I did used to make in the UK, and unfortunately, and maybe I was just unlucky with like where I found, but I used quite a few different factories in the UK, and I have to say the cost versus the quality did not add up. And I think it's partly because like everyone outsourced, and so there wasn't the industry for it, which meant there wasn't the money for it, which meant that the skills then got lost. And maybe with time that will improve, but again, because I'm not a big enough entity, I do not have the quantities to set up a whole enterprise here just for production, so I'm at the mercy of what already exists, if that makes sense. So I think, you know, if there was like a really big company, that would be the kind of project they should do.
Yeah. Okay, next question. So Petra mentions that Slovenia enforces employment laws vigorously. Do you think that it's lacking here in the UK, and what can we learn from countries like Slovenia?
Oh, it's massively lacking in the UK, but it doesn't help when we have a government who literally actually doesn't give a crap about anyone. So, yeah, we could learn a lot from Slovenia. They have incredible environmental laws as well.
Yeah.
People are held to account in a much better way in terms of like policy and everything. For a start, in the UK, like in most cities, the minimum wage does not equate to anywhere near a living wage. So even just doing that would make a big difference. I mean, like the fact, right, and this is so ironic, that during COVID, certain big supermarket chains were actually encouraging their customers to buy food so that the supermarket chains could then donate them to the food banks.
Yeah.
Why weren't the supermarkets just donating to the food banks? And also, why weren't they just paying their workers a living wage so that they wouldn't even have to use food banks? And why are the supermarkets allowed to get away with paying a wage that's not a living wage, and then get massively cheap produce of farmers that have to get subsidized by the government as well, to then sell it to us and then avoid taxes and pay their shareholders instead of, like, so on every level they're taking money out of people's reach. Like, it's all, I don't know, I think everything would have to change in the UK for the UK to be remotely like close to Slovenia in terms of what they prioritize, I think.
And like you said, it's on lots of levels, isn't it? So it's just kind of not one thing. It's
so multifaceted. Like, yeah. Like, because they're allowed to not pay tax, they're allowed to not pay a living wage, and they're allowed to not pay full price for produce. And that's like that with pretty much every company operating out. Like, even France sued Google or Apple or whatever for not paying their taxes, and the UK didn't want to get involved with that, even when all of the scandal came out about tax avoidance. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if did you read the study that was done in 2015 by some Northern Belt universities, which had a look at the textile industry just in the north of England, and found that something like 11,000 people are working in factories there for under £3 an hour. So like slavery and factories abusing their workers and bonded labor and all of these things, it's not, you know, Bangladesh is not the only problem. Like, we have the same problem in the UK, and I think until we start like acknowledging that and actually actively doing something about that, just by producing in the UK, you will have a smaller carbon footprint in terms of manufacturing, but you're not necessarily going to be guaranteed to be guilt-free.
Yeah, and all that's happened with Leicester, you know, I think it's becoming more apparent. I don't think people have thought about it necessarily. But anyway, okay, so next question was, it's great how you share all your resources and information. It's a real collaboration. How important is that?
To me, I think it's fundamental.
Yeah.
Like, transparency is fundamental to me, because I do not have, well, no one has the means to be perfect, and so in order to be honest and not mislead, transparency is really the only option.
Mm. Yeah. Next question. I'm thinking of starting a fashion brand. Where should I start if I want ethics and sustainability embedded into my DNA? Which is a good question.
That's a really good question. What's your budget?
Yeah.
If you have no budget like I did, just educate yourself and abuse all the people you know who are educated in that field. Read amazing books like Tansy E. Hopkins' Stitched Up, The Anti-Capitalist Guide to Fashion. She's recently done a footwear book as well. Kate Fletcher, I think it's Kate Fletcher, or is that someone else? Oh God, I'm so bad with names. I will send a list of books if you want to read them, but there's a lot of good resources for sustainability. I would look into studies from like that, Northern University collaboration about the garment manufacturing in the UK, for example. They're all available online for free. Clean Clothes Campaign, Labour Behind the Label. They're amazing organisations with open source data and access, and they're like working tirelessly to make the fashion industry better. Greenpeace, Fashion Revolution has great like entry level information for customers, but it's equally helpful for anyone. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. But yeah, like knowledge is power. You can have knowledge without money. Implementing it is slightly harder. But as I said, if you start from a base of knowledge, then at least you can make informed decisions.
Yeah. But was there any organisations or anyone that you tapped into to sort of, I suppose, for more the kind of like logistics of setting up a business? Was there anything like that you tapped into?
Yes, no. I did a couple of like East London small business mentor sessions and stuff, but ultimately I think businesses are almost a little bit like children, in as much as you think you know everything about it until you have one, and then you realize you've got it all wrong and you're just making it up as you go along.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've all been there.
Yeah, so like be prepared to like fuck up all the time and then learn from it and hopefully not repeat it.
And probably have like people around you as well. I'm sure you probably had some people that were kind of like your support network as well, that kind of can like sort of bounce ideas off.
So the ethical fashion industry is quite small and full of really engaged and enthusiastic people who are more often than not super happy to like have conversations, and because ultimately we all just want the world to be better anyway. So and if if there's anything I can answer, feel free to shoot us an email or whatever. But yeah, I don't have any good answers for that, because if I did, I think I would have could have benefited from it too. Oh, lost you again. Yeah.
2 more questions.
Is it me?
Well.
Oh, there you go. Do you mind repeating that?
Could you hear that? Oh,
how about now?
Gone. That's better.
Okay, cool.
Did you hear the question or not?
I did not hear the question.
So someone said, love what you do, love that you care so much. Do you think the big brands out there feel the same, and who's doing it well?
That's a really tricky question, because unless you're inside it, you can never know what goes on. I think from the outside, I think like big brands probably are governed by shareholders and who have a slightly different priority. So I think they'll do it if they see that it gives them customers.